main part anyway. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. You know, there's a saying behind every great man, there's a great woman, and it is no truer than today's guest. You know, if it wasn't for today's guest, we might not have one of the greatest and most influential doctors in the plant-based world, Dr. Joel Fuhrman. And when you hear this story, you will understand why, because it wasn't his original intention to go to medical school. If it wasn't for his wife, Lisa Fuhrman, this might not have happened. And I can't wait for you to meet her. We're calling today the Nutritarian Life with the Nutritarian Wife. Please welcome Lisa Fuhrman. It's so great to see you again.
Oh my gosh, Chef AJ, I'm thrilled to be here. Couldn't be more excited.
It is, you know, I think it's so important for people to hear your story because it's a fun story for one, but you know, there could have been two Dr. Fuhrmans.
That is very true. So I was pre-med when I met my husband. I met him through his sister, Gail, and we started dating. And at that point, he was an international coach for ice skating. And I got the joy of seeing international competitions. It was wonderful. He also his father had a chain of shoe stores that he was going to inherit. And that's really where he was. And as I would be going through my pre-med courses, he would kind of go in a way, he'd be envious of it. And we were talking, and the very first time that I told him I was pre-med, he said, "Why are you going to medical school? You know, what do doctors do but give you pills?" At that point, he was very into nutrition. Nutrition was as much a passion of his as the work that he did. And I said to him, "Why am I going?" I said, "Why don't you go?" I said, "You could really have a great effect on other people and other doctors, and maybe in your very small way, change medicine, change the way that doctors practice." And, you know, it just took off. And so we both went to medical school. I was a year ahead of him. I went to a New Jersey state school, and he went to UPenn because it was the closest Ivy League. I convinced him to go to an Ivy League school because I felt not only did he have to show patience, but I wanted his peers to learn too. And what's the best thing but to know that you came from a great school? So that's really the intent and why he went to Penn. Yes, I left in my third year, so I consider myself a 0.5 MD. It wasn't for me. It was for him. As much as he loved it was as much as I disliked it. And so that was really it. And that was the beginning of Dr. Fuhrman.
That is so cool. People are asking, are you from Jersey?
I'm from Jersey. I'm actually from New York originally. We'll go into that another time, perhaps. But yes, I'm from New Jersey. I'm a hybrid.
You know, it's so interesting, Lisa, because, you know, Dr. Fuhrman was such a wonderful ice skater. And like, you know, people think, oh, maybe he could have gone to the Olympics, and maybe he could have, but he wouldn't have this life influencing and helping all the people.
100%. He was set to go to the Olympics. It was 6 months prior that he had his accident. And yes, then I wouldn't have met Gail, and then Joel wouldn't have met me. And so, yes, you have to kind of say it was meant to be.
Yeah, but shared, because, you know, sometimes when things happen to us, like in that, like I can imagine if you're an Olympic athlete, it's got to be devastating. But now I'm sure if he looks back, he's pretty happy with the way his life turned out.
I think he is. And I also think that, you know what was very funny? I was a chemistry major at college, and going to medical school was the hardest thing I ever did, right? The first 2 years, your book knowledge, you have to study for your boards, and then you go into clinics. Hardest thing I ever did. And he said that ice skating was much harder than med school.
They both sound hard to me. Do you think you had finished medical school? Did you ever think about what type of specialty you would have?
Psychiatry. And I went in for the wrong reasons. I should have gone and become a psychologist. I found out psychiatry was more about medicine than I anticipated. And, you know, at that point, I was old enough when I left medical school, and my choices were very slim. I didn't really want to do anything in medicine at that point. I wanted children. So about a year later, I became pregnant with my daughter, my first daughter. And then 3 daughters and 1 son later, you know, I became a business person. And I was a chemistry major. And I became, you know, now I'm the operations officer for the 2 businesses that we have. My husband, Joel, was an economics major and became the doctor. So as far as I was concerned, we just switched roles.
That is something. Well, you guys complement each other very well.
Yeah,
So, you're in California now. So do you like it?
I love it. I do a happy dance all the time. I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for what we do here. I love our Eat to Live retreat. I love it. It's a passion. It really
That's
is.
so cool. But it's so, I mean, the weather's a lot better than New Jersey, right?
Uh-huh.
And the produce, because you guys are growing your own produce now.
Well, the whole thing is also, and one of the things about being a nutritarian is because we don't use salt, because we don't use sugar, and we don't use oil, your palate changes, your tongue changes, and the foods that you find blah or bland become very, you taste them all. And why I'm bringing this up is that I can tell a pepper from New Jersey from a pepper from California. It is so different. The California food, the quality of the taste of the organic food is second to none.
Yeah. And that's so cool that you're growing it now.
Yeah, we do. We have 106 fruit trees and we've got, I think, 12 vegetable beds. So we're good. We're good. And it's you can't appreciate the land as much as when you see the food grown.
I'm curious how your diet evolved. Like, so when you were dating Dr. Fuhrman, how were you guys eating? And was it a gradual thing or?
Okay, so when I first met him as a sophomore, and we didn't start dating at that point, he came to visit his sister Gail, and I was in the dorm, and he came and we sat, and he and I just talked for 3 hours. And at that time, he was talking about the food. At that time, my sister-in-law told me how they ate at home, and it was due to Joel's father that all this kind of happened in Joel's life. And Joel was quite young when it all happened. And his two sisters really didn't grab onto it like Joel did. It became a passion of Joel's. But when I met Gail, she was in my school, and she told me how she had been brought up to eat. And my response to her was, "You poor thing." I was so conventional. I really was. And I was like, MDs know everything. And, I was that kind of so Joel, when I first started dating him, he said, "Do you think you eat healthy?" I mean, it's not an ordinary question a person would ask somebody. And again, I knew about Joel. I knew about the way of eating because I'd been friends with his sister. So it didn't surprise me. And I said, of course I eat healthily. I have cornflakes for the morning, with a milk and banana. And I have for lunch, I have, an egg salad sandwich. And for dinner, I had chicken and a potato and vegetable. I ate very healthily. That's what I thought. And of course, over time, it changed. I could say a lot about that. I had a couple of health problems. One thing was I had 5 urinary tract infections in 4 years of college. And I was also diagnosed with PCOS, at polycystic ovary syndrome. And what that entails is it could mean that you might have trouble conceiving. I had irregular periods when I was 20 years old. I didn't have my period for 6 months. And so I went to an endocrinologist and I was through blood work diagnosed that way. After eating this way, so there became a point in time when I knew about fasting, right? Because we all knew about natural hygiene. That was the commonality that so many of us knew, which is now the National Health Association. But anyway, through natural hygiene, I knew about water fasting, and I had gotten a urinary tract infection. And it was a time when Joel and I were together, but I was still living, I was engaged to him at the time, but I was living at home. And he asked me to water fast when this urinary tract infection came upon me. And I said, I can't do that. I'm I'm living with my parents. They'll know that I'm fasting. How am I going to do this? And his father got on the phone and he asked me to water fast. So I did. I secretly in my room fasted. And I have to tell you, the day was painful. Anytime I urinated, it was like a sharp knife going through me. And the next day I traveled to go to Joel's. And by that time, it really quelled. The pain quelled, everything quelled. And the only thing I can tell you is that I only fasted for those 2 days. I have never had a urinary tract infection since. In addition to that, my PCOS, by the time I was in medical school and had doctors anytime to I can get an appointment with a doctor, no problem. I was undiagnosed They said, you don't have PCOS. It must have been a misdiagnosis. And of course, that's their conventional way of saying something. But indeed, it just went away. So those are two things that of my personal stories as through living this life. But did I change my diet quickly? For the most part, yes. However, when I'm not a food addict, makes very big difference. So when I wanted to go have a burger at Beefsteak Charlie's because I missed it, I went and had a burger. And Joel was very good. He would come with me. He would see me eat it. He wouldn't eat it himself, but he understood. When I wanted a piece of pizza, he understood that. So it was, I would say I did about 90%, except for those rare times. And then what did happen? What happened was that over time, that Beefsteak Charlie's, I would have a terrible reaction to. I remember having gone to Atlantic City, and there was a big cookie and it had a beautiful chocolate top. And I went and had that. And if I tell you, I was up the whole night. I had such a sugar high. And the next day I felt so awful. My body couldn't tolerate it anymore. It was too clean to tolerate. Did I want a chocolate chip cookie? I mean, a chocolate cookie like that? Never again. So my own body gave me enough signals to know that I just didn't want it anymore. I psychologically followed what my physiology was telling me.
I love that. I love that. That'll give people a lot of hope. And I love that you said, yeah, but you weren't a food addict. So going off plan didn't make you keep going off plan.
No. And, I deal with all the people at our retreat now. And I just had a conversation with them yesterday. And the thing is that we are a very small bubble. The people who are nutritarians are very small. And we have to make that bubble safe. And our retreat is their safe place. But there's a lot of anxiety when you leave the retreat, right? So what do you have to do? You have to plan. You have to have meals that you know you're going to make. There's a lot of planning. But the first thing that you have to do is you have to say, I come first. You have to say, my health comes first. That means that you have to protect yourself. And you really have to, and all that entails. What does that entail? So you really have to, and know that your son or your husband or your mother may not approve of what you're doing, but over time, as they see you becoming healthier, instead of them disapproving it, they're going to not only say, great, this is happening to you, but how could this help me? If it helped you so much, how can it help me? So in a way, you're sending a message to your loved ones of what this can do, not only for what it has done for yourself, but what it could do for them.
Yeah. And what I love, I was listening to an interview you did a while back, and because one of the questions is, did your children ever rebel? And one of the things I really liked about that is, you always kept a clean house.
Correct. Well, what I say is, don't make food a war zone. So you have to understand that I was very lucky. I gave birth knowing how I was going to feed my children. And what did that mean? In the house, 100%, 100%. Outside of the house, you do what you think is best. And that's how we lived. When they had parties, even though they were 6 years old, I let them eat whatever was at the party. I wasn't a believer. I'm a conventional person at heart. I wasn't a believer in making my child feel different. They feel different. They're going to feel different enough. They don't have to feel different socially. It's very important for children to want to be the same as everybody else. And that's okay. It's a part of growing up. And so out of the house, they were able to eat as they wanted, but we educated them. They're all nutritarians today. My oldest is 34. My youngest is 20. He's in college and he has his challenges and he knows what to do. And I trust him and I trust them.
That is fantastic. I'm going to delve a little bit deeper in that. But one thing before I forget, because you had mentioned when Dr. Fuhrman proposed, how did he propose? Was he romantic?
He just said, we were together and he said, would you like to marry me? And I was like, whoa. I was very young at the time. I got married at 23 and I said, whoa. That's all I remember saying to myself. To him, I said, oh my gosh, I'd love to. But to myself, I was like, whoa.
How long have you guys been married?
It will be, let's see, we were married 40 years in September.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you talked about like, well, just in case, I would think people watching this have heard of you, but like, let's say they haven't heard the word nutritarian. So what is that?
Okay, so we separate ourselves from everybody else only because nothing defined it. Nothing defined it. It's nutrient dense, plant-based. It's a funny thing because nutrient dense wasn't even words before, Joel. It didn't even happen. But what it is that if you can think of what foods are the most nutrient dense, and we don't talk about, there are macronutrients and micronutrients. Macro is fat, carbohydrate, protein. And micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and most importantly, antioxidants or phytochemicals. The phytochemicals there are thousands. There are thousands, but those happen to be the most anti-inflammation, anti-cancer foods. And so we stress those. And if you want to think of an acronym, there's G-BOMBs, greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Those are the most anti-inflammation, anti-cancer foods that you can eat. Do you have to be vegan? Can you have some animal products? Chef AJ, I know you're a vegan and most of your listeners will be vegan. And I'd say that it's great to be a vegan, and we ourselves are vegans. But there are some people, older people, who have a very hard time digesting protein. And there are some people who are anorexic, who'd have a very hard time. And so those people, there may be a time when you can have some animal products. What we stress is nutrients, micronutrients.
Nice. Very good. So let's see what some of the questions that we have that were sent in. So you were talking about your kids. We were talking about your kids. Did they grow up knowing that they were eating differently than other people?
Oh, you bet. So the very first, we lived in a development, and a development has people with magnifying glasses or binoculars. They watch everything. And of course, my children felt different, to the point of where they felt better than everybody else. Not a great thing, because your 4-year-old can go over to their friend and say, "Why are you eating that? That's not good for you." That kind of thing. So you have to kind of let them know that their parents, your friend's parents don't know better, but it's best that you don't tell your friend, right? Only ask that if they ask you, then you can tell. But when you start mouthing off to your friend, it doesn't make for a good situation. So we had to teach our children when and when not to speak, how to speak to people, right?
Wow. That's amazing. The SOS free part, which, I'm also SOS free, is sometimes I find more challenging for people than the other parts of the diet.
Well, salt is it's a masquerader. It masquerades other tastes. It really, people say, when you say about salt, they'll say it's a taste enhancer. Yeah, it's a taste enhancer to the point where you don't want to stop eating it. It's, the world has come and learned, corporations learned that salt makes people want to eat more. And when you take away the salt, which of course is so deleterious to your health when it comes to blood pressure and so many other ailments, which is why we don't have salt. But when you take away the processed salt, the salt that's put into foods, it takes a while, but your taste buds change. They become more sensitive to all the other flavors that innately we have. And so the salt is not a good thing for our health. And when it takes some time, it takes about 2-3 weeks, some people longer, but over time, they will taste and appreciate whole natural foods that much more.
That's great. Is it true? I think I remember Dr. Fuhrman once telling a story about one of your children coming home from school or saying something like, "Why don't the other parents love their children?" Because they were,
I honestly have to say that that's always a question. It's at this point, I think my children feel they were so lucky. And a long time ago, there were some explaining to do to them, but the idea is that we've only told them that we eat this way out of love and concern for your health, right? That's why we eat this way. And I tell it's very difficult for parents who have children 10 years old, 15 years old, because they've been living one way and all of a sudden you want to eat another way. And so the starting point is to talk about eating this way. You found out that it's such a healthy, good way of eating. And if the kids say, why don't other parents? They just don't know better, right? That's it. They don't know better. But we're so lucky we found out this information and now we want to give it to you. And what I say to them is let them pick out those foods that are there. That's their favorites and start with those.
Yeah, that makes sense. How is your son managing at college? How is the healthy eating in college?
Yeah, so remember what I said. They're all nutritarians. They all know it, but it is tough. And is he completely eating? He's doing the best he can. And so the funny thing is, when we had COVID at the retreat, my son was stuck at the retreat for 7 weeks. And it was where he had to eat the retreat food. And I have to say, all his acne cleared up. So what does that mean? That means he wasn't eating all nutritarian, right? He would go out with his friends. But the idea that his acne cleared up and he loved the food, so that when he went back to Jersey, so he learned then how important it was to eat healthy on his own level. Yeah. And so he does the best he can. And you know what? I don't ask. Whatever he does, he looks great, he feels great, and that's it.
But that's very compelling research that happened because he can see it on his body.
And for teenagers, what's more important than how you look, right?
Absolutely. So that if more people would just pay attention to how they look and feel and the relationship that food has on that,
That's correct. 100%. Yeah.
Saoirse says, do you have a social media handle and how can we learn more from you? Because when I was digging deep and it's like, there's not a lot out there about you.
I'm a busy lady. I kind of run 2 businesses and I try to stay away from social because I just can't, I don't have time. It's just too difficult for me. And I have 4 wonderful children that I have a lot to do with.
Yeah. Nice. Good. So like because it sounds like, the kids had no other choice but to eat healthy at home and then they could do what they wanted when outside of the home. Like if they had play dates, did other children come in and get exposed?
Oh, yeah. They love the food. Oh my gosh. My one daughter, so I have 3 girls. And then I say I have a 4th daughter. She used to come in. Every kid was happy. They could come in. The kids that were closest to my kids opened our refrigerator. I mean, they just went in and took food, but they all loved my girls' boyfriends. All of the kids really had a great time. I have to tell you a funny story though. My son's friends, one friend brought over Dunkin' Donuts to a party in my house, brought Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm thinking, holy shoot. Now I have to tell you, his mom came in as a patient to my husband. So he brings in Dunkin' Donuts. She knew exactly how we're eating. And I'm just like blown away. What do? I don't want to make the kid feel bad. He's obviously not knowing. And I threw him away. I couldn't. I said in my whole life. So things like that didn't really happen too much. When my kids had friends over, what they did, they would make smoothies. So they would take all the frozen bananas and then they'd take fruit and they would make concoctions and they loved it. So we made it a fun thing, for Halloween. And I know you had somebody ask about what did we do for Halloween? When the girls were very young, I really didn't know what to do. So I gave out things like raisins, just bad stuff. And then I came across something called Oriental Trading. It's a catalog. And what did I do? I bought neon, glow in the dark necklaces. And instead of being the schlubby house, I became the house that everybody came to because I would buy like hundreds of them and everybody would put them on. And of course, when did they go Halloween trick-or-treating? It was dark out. So it was the best thing. And at one point, my kids, in bringing home the candy, and at the beginning when the kids were small, I did let them have 3 candies. So again, remember, I'm keen on not having my children rebel. How could you make it so they don't rebel? So in my head, yeah, you can give them a couple of bucks of money. Sure, you could promise this, that. I didn't get there yet. In my mind, I had to say, I have to give them something. So I gave them 3 pieces of candy. Over time, I got a little bit more creative. And it got to the point where none of them, I would make them their favorite meal that night. So that was really good. And none of them really wanted the candy. In fact, the last time my son went trick or treating, they opened the candy and they just went, can you imagine that people eat this? So again, it happened over time, but they all learned and they got it.
That's wonderful to hear that, So let's see. I'm going to go to the questions that have been sent in. And of course, you know what? I see one live, though, that I'm going to ask first, because this is an important distinction. Brenda says, how does the Nutritarian diet differ from whole food plant-based?
Because we emphasize micronutrients. That's really it. And when you feed your body micronutrients, the body's physiologic cravings disappear. We have psychological cravings and we have physiological cravings. And the biological cravings disappear because you're filling the body with the nutrients it's so hungry for. So micronutrients, it's all about H equals N over C. Your health is determined by the nutrients per calorie.
Great. Perfect. Other than your immediate family, yourself, Dr. Fuhrman, and the 4 children, did anyone else join you, like your siblings, Dr. Fuhrman?
Oh, yeah. So I could tell you a phenomenal story about my dad. So, and I'll tell you something very funny. We have time, so I could tell you this. My mother is a Jewish woman, and Jewish mothers have power. And so she was very strong in our lives, is very strong in our lives still. And my husband is very strong. His passions are strong. So you can't imagine what happened when this Jewish man, right? Because you think she was happy that he was Jewish. Nothing like that. In my family, it didn't matter. But here comes this guy saying about food, you don't need to eat meat. You don't need to eat animal products. And here's this strong mother. And so they bumped heads. My mother thought he was going to kill me, honestly. And, the funny story is, they bumped heads for quite a while. I say maybe for a few years. My mother's like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. I would never breastfeed my child. Things that, because she was old school, right? And I was brought up very conventionally. So they bumped heads. How did this end up being where now my mother loves him to death? He loves her. My mother works for us. My father works for us. Crazy stories. If anybody can change, this is a crazy story. So now let's go a few years. My mother's now following diet. My mother really very quickly got, onto it, respected it. At the beginning, it was different. But my dad was from Brooklyn, and he's a meat and potatoes guy. He loved his 2 desserts, a corn muffin, a black and white. For those people on the East Coast, they know what I'm talking about. But anyway, he had a heart attack when he was 70 years old, and he had a quadruple bypass. And we asked the doctor, what can we expect prognosis-wise? And he said, well, if he gets 10 years, consider yourselves lucky. And at that point, my father said, okay, I'm ready to follow the Nutritarian diet. You have to imagine how painful it was for me not to see my family respect the plan, right? I'm living it. I'm seeing miraculous recoveries. And I'm seeing now my dad had a heart attack. My son was 4 months old. Every day I went to the hospital. You couldn't make me not go to the hospital. And I, of course, medical trained. I know how bad it is for a baby to be there, but I was there all the time. So my dad, moving on, goes and follows the Nutritarian diet. And I would say now my son is 20. My father is doing phenomenally. But I have to say this too, his ejection fraction, which is the amount of blood that your heart pumps out, right? Your heart, the whole job of your heart is to pump blood to your organs. So if that goes down, you're in trouble. Your organs are not getting enough blood, and your heart is working faster and harder to get the blood out. And when you have some dead heart tissue, it can't work as well. So his ejection fraction went down. Well, about 5 years ago, his cardiologist said, Norm, he said, let me check your ejection fraction. Let's see where it is, because this cardiologist happens to not only know my husband, but follows the plan. And he checked his ejection fraction and it went back to normal. In other words, from not having a heart that can pump well, it went back to where it's pumping very well. My father is, God bless him, is celebrating his 90th birthday this in March. So I have that. My sister Randy had her thing going on. She is a cancer survivor. She also didn't follow it when she called me and cried to me about having the mammographer, the person who did the mammography told her that was cancer, didn't even have it from the doctor. She was hysterical. And I said, Randy, you are now becoming a Nutritarian. Everything that you put in your mouth, you're going to have Joel tell you what to do. And I said, I don't care what the prognosis is. I don't care what the staging is. As long as you follow my husband, this is going to be life-saving and you're going to live a long life. And she said to me that it gave her a feeling of control, because when you have cancer, you feel so out of control because it's all in the doctor's hands now. But what she put in her mouth was the one thing she could control. And my sister, God bless her, is doing excellently. And in fact, she's in charge of our success program, which is our food addiction program, which is doing very well.
Those are great. I mean, the thing about your dad is it just shows it's never too late. Most people
never too late, but your body heals itself given the right environment.
Because a lot of people would give up.
But yes.
I should have your dad on the show because that is an incredible story right there.
It's an incredible story. Yeah. And my family, the Jewish family that we are, they won't allow me to publish it because they feel that it'll jinx it.
I get you.
You understand?
Oh,
the superstition.
Are you kidding? It's still congratulations. Mazel tov, tell them.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Some nice comments. Mrs. Dr. Joel looks exquisite, by the way.
Gosh, thank you.
And Lisa Fuhrman is so charming and gracious, says Jan. And Saoirse says, what advice would you give parents who switch the diet for their kids at an older age? It's so much harder, isn't it?
It is so much harder. But the thing is that, number one, I say leave things around the house that talk about health, if you can, and the Nutritarian plan. But talk to them and explain to them what's going on for you and how you'd like them to participate. But remember, you're making a choice for yourself. They're not making the choice. And they're old enough, if they're in their teens, they're going to want to just do what their friends do. Give them some slack. The problem is you have to protect yourself. So if you have to do a lot of different things, and I can go on and on about that. You'd have to make a separate area for yourself. You have to really prepare for yourself, but try to make it as healthy as you can with them still liking what they're eating. Otherwise, they're going to repel. You cannot force any child because they will sneak. That's all I have to say. You got to make it so it's transparent. They have to be transparent to you. You have to be forgiving back. And you just leave things around the house. As they get older, they're not going to want to read it right now, but as they get older, you never know, they might want to read something. And as they see you're feeling better, you're doing better, they're going to be grateful. There's nothing a child wants more than a healthy parent. Give them that gift and hopefully they will follow.
Do you have a favorite of Dr. Fuhrman's best-selling books?
I do. I would say Super Immunity is my favorite.
Well, mine is Fast Food Genocide.
You know what? I understand that completely. I think fast food genocide is great. And I guess I was thinking more or less for people about their own health, but certainly I think historically, societal-wise, fast food genocide is wonderful.
What I love about Dr. Fuhrman's work, and by the way, guys, he's going to be on the show in like less than 3 weeks. He's already booked for February 22nd, is he's one of the few plant-based doctors that really believes in and understands and treats food addiction, because whether somebody's Nutritarian or whole food plant exclusive, people can be healthy, but what they don't understand is if they're a food addict, they can't dabble in like a little flour and a little sugar and all that stuff. And he really understands it. And that's really what I appreciate about him so much.
Yes, for sure. I think food addiction is real and it's Listen, look at the society we live in. Even if you weren't a food addict, you become a food addict because the foods itself, they're made, corporate makes food, so you become addicted to it.
I love that. Even if you weren't before, you pretty much are going to be if you keep eating.
Yes.
I love that. And that is true. And that's what they intended. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
People would love to know what your favorite meals are, like your children's and Dr. Fuhrman's, and like, what do they love to eat?
Okay. I would say my favorite is the Thanksgiving loaf that we have. We have a terrific Thanksgiving loaf, which is like, I don't know, it's lentil, walnuts, and a whole bunch of things. That's probably mine. The other one I think we all happen to love is zucchini ravioli or zucchini lasagna. I think that's a really great favorite of ours. I happen to love this very little thing that we do, and it's very simple. You take tofu and you make them in about half-inch slices, and you put tomato sauce on top, and you dehydrate them. And if I tell you how much I love that, another thing that I do, which I happen to love, is I take sweet potato, I bake the sweet potato, and then I put it into the dehydrator, and it's wonderful. I love all these things that are very simple. I don't really have to make anything that's really big, but I think that pretty much is it. And my favorite actually is banana smoothies. I love the banana smoothies things.
Who does most of the cooking? You or Dr.
Well, I think in the past it was me, only because he was so busy. But we're both very busy people, and we're fortunate that we right now eat at the retreat. Before that, we would both, if it was on the weekends, we generally shared the cooking. We would make a tremendously big salad, and also prepare for the week. There's one dish that is today, my son will tell you it's his favorite nutritarian food. And that is that we take kale and we steam the kale, take, of course, the stem off, chop it up. And then as a sauce, all I do is soy milk and cashews. And you put that together and it's delicious. And I put it on vegetables. And then I put it also with sweet potato and I add a little bit of that sauce. I put cashews in the Vitamix and I add the soy milk just to the point of where the cashews are filled. The soy milk fills up to the cashew level. And I blend it make it a real smoothie sauce, and it's great. Now, I will tell you, my husband has changed it up so that half is cashews and half is hemp seeds. I haven't done that, but certainly that's, just to get a healthier sauce. But that's my favorite.
Nice.
My son's.
That's fantastic. Here is a question from Michelle, who's watching live. Any suggestions for grandparents when grandchildren don't eat plant-based?
Well, I think you have to serve them what they like in the sense of everything that's not animal products. So you've got to dig a little bit and you've got to figure out what do they like. Take them to the take them to the produce lanes and say, what do you like here? Or ask them on the phone. What kinds of things, like what kinds of vegetables do you like? What kind of fruit do you like? Make something you think that they'll like. You have to be a little bit creative and you have to think about their needs, but ask them to help you and say, look, I'm eating this way. I want you to try it. Try it for grandma, And the whole thing about a grandparent to grandchild is you have to establish a loving relationship first. That comes first. And then be transparent with them. Tell them about what you're doing and see how they react. Kids really, there isn't a child out there who doesn't want to have a grandparent who listens to them.
Yeah. Or get them some toys from Oriental Trader. Don't make it about the food, maybe.
I don't know. I think you can make it about the food. You just have to know your kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I saw. Oh, what do you guys do when you travel? How do you maintain the diet?
Easy. Domestically, we go to Whole Foods all the time. We always pick hotels that have kitchens, and we make sure we have it. And it's easy. And then when it's international, we go to farmers markets. What fun internationally to go to farmers markets, and then you buy the freshest produce. And even if you don't have a kitchen, you can make breakfast and lunch is easy. You have a salad, you go get soup somewhere. Anyway, that's a whole different story.
Nice. I don't know if this one might be too personal, so feel free not to answer. From Trisha, do your children date people who are vegan?
They date anybody. It doesn't have to be just vegan. I could tell you my oldest daughter loves when somebody's vegan, but no.
Nice. Here's a question. What do you do for exercise?
Run, lift weights, hike, bike, swim, all of that stuff. But I'm a runner and I also hike an awful lot and I lift weights.
Where you live now, it must be great, the hiking.
I love it. Love it. Love it.
I love it. Jean says, I love Lisa and Dr. Fuhrman. So yeah, Florence, she just told you her workout routine. Fantastic. Do you have what other self-care practices do you recommend for staying in good health? Asks Faith.
I've just gotten to the point of cosmetics where I'm also trying to become more clean in that regard. So I've picked up some cosmetics that I love. One of the things that we sell due to me and finding a product that I happen to love is Organic Essence. It's a skincare line, which you can find on drfuhrman.com. And the packaging is all paper, if you can imagine. And it's just the best ingredients. So I've also been buying cleaner cosmetics wherever I can and however I can. I haven't used deodorant for the last 30 years. I don't know, Chef AJ, do you still use deodorant?
I don't use deodorant. I don't because I don't smell.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
When you eat this way, you don't exude a foul body odor. So I don't use deodorant or antiperspirant because we're supposed to sweat. I mean, Charles, do I stink ever? I don't know. No, I don't think so. People would tell me.
And I haven't used deodorant also. The only time that I feel that I smell is when I'm on a plane. I feel that in the past, so I'll put on this very natural deodorant that we also sell. But I, for the most part, don't. Guess what else I don't do? I never shampoo my hair.
But do you use conditioner or anything?
Yes, all the time. All the time. And I rub my hair so that the oils come out. I rub the scalp and the oils just come out. And I haven't used a shampoo in, again, years and years and years.
Well, that does save money. And people are asking, are there any healthy hair dyes that you could recommend?
What makes you think I dye my hair?
No, I know. I think that. The person asking the question is asking for that.
Oh, no, I'm the only 62-year-old that doesn't go gray. That's what I have to say. No, I wish I did. I can tell you that I just went and got my hair done and fortunately did not burn my scalp. For some reason, I came to California. Maybe I'm eating cleaner than I did. All these other ones were burning my scalp. I don't know. I think any ammonia-based, she took out one that was an ammonia-based one. My hair, I will never go gray. This is the conventional person that I am. I will never go gray. So healthy or not, I'm not going gray. That's my bad thing. Sorry.
Well, and I think I don't think people. I think when people eat really clean, like we do, like we can be allowed a few indiscretions, if you will, like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It makes me feel younger. What can I say?
And I do my nails fancy.
Me too. My nails aren't that fancy. See, I can't do that much, but I do somewhat. Yeah, it makes me feel good.
I know exactly. Thank you, Lisa. So this is a fun question from Kim. I'm wondering what hobbies and activities she likes to do with Dr. Fuhrman, like puzzles or games or anything like that.
If only we had time. But I tell you, a pastime of ours is that we watch TV together. And right now we're hooked on a show, which I'm embarrassed to say, it's called Shameless. It is the most fascinating show that you can ever imagine. But that is I wouldn't even say it a guilty pleasure. So Joel and I mostly hike together, and occasionally, there was one time recently we played cards. It was the sweetest time. It was he and I just playing cards. It doesn't happen often. We mostly watch TV. He and I are extremely busy people. And he is really working on the Ask the Doctor forums that we have every night. He's answering questions. And so I'll go start the TV and then he'll come in. And for the last 2 hours, and we're binging and we can't stop watching. And one of us says, do you think it's time? And we're like, yes, about 11:30.
Oh my goodness. That's cool. So I love that you're real people and watch real TV shows. Yeah. Here's an interesting question from Susan. I know you guys have a food addiction program, not just at the Eat to Live retreat, but that people can work with your counselors. Right. And she says, I'm addicted to all food, even my whole food, plant-based, no oil meals, which I have been now for the last 5 years. It's crazy because I will eat 4 times more than my hubby who eats the standard American diet way. I go to bed thinking about food and wake up thinking about food. Does food addiction ever go away, even if it's healthy food?
Wow. So again, I can't answer that. I would want her to dive deeper into what the obsession is about. And if it's, it's something that I think she has to work through, because you can't, there has to be something behind that obsession.
Yeah. You really want me to ask that? The person that's texting me. No, because we play these games. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jackbox. I play
No.
with the McRae family. It's real. It's like, well, with the pandemic, we couldn't see people, but also they live in Maryland and I live here, so I couldn't see them anyway. So it's a way to play like really, really fun games online, like,
Sure.
like games that you would play in person, but they found a way to do it so you can play them on Zoom now. And it's like, well,
Cool.
yeah, we'll invite them. We'll see if they do that. Okay, let's see. I'm scrolling through the questions. And I know there was another one in here for you because so many came in advance. Any friends that eat this way? Other than
My
influencers?
best friend is a nutritarian.
Nice.
And so I guess we just kind of meet those kinds of people.
Yeah, I guess like attracts like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. There's just so many comments, really nice comments. I'm like, why is she never going gray? Because I'm never going gray either. Same reason, because we're both Aries and we're vain and we don't. That's
Good answer. Good answer.
Probably the if I could go like a pretty gray, like, you've seen people like where it's just beautiful all over, I would do it. But when it's,
I know there's a certain elegance. There is definitely a certain elegance. I don't think I'll carry that elegance.
Yeah. But the question is, do I color my hair? Not all the time, but I don't personally do it. Like once in a while, I'll let her do it. But like most of the time during the pandemic, I didn't. But yeah, sometimes when I get it cut, she'll put a little color on. But my gray's back here, so like nobody sees it anyway. So what the heck, Michelle says Dr. Fuhrman is a gardener. He makes his own compost.
Yes, he does. Yes, for a long time now.
That's so cool. Let's see. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Fuhrman, says Paul Chatlin. Duh. Okay. Of course you are. Yeah. Here. So this is a fun question. What does your typical day look like? Because every guest, Lisa, on the show, doesn't matter if they're vegan or not, gets asked, what do you eat for a day?
Oh, today I had blueberries. So my daughters, I plug. Here I am plugging away. My daughters have a brand called Doc's Daughters, and they make overnight oats. And today I took a box of blueberries that I got from Costco, organic blueberries, and I took half of my daughter's banana, can't think. Anyway, one of her overnight oats, and I took the half and I put that in a bowl, and I put chia, hemp, and flaxseed in the bowl. And I had that for breakfast. I also took, because I like to pick, and I picked one of our dehydrated sweet potato. And I also took half of my tofu with tomato sauce. So I really was just that was a conglomerate kind of thing. And banana Foster, that's what it is. For lunch, I have salad and a soup. And for dinner, don't forget, I'm eating the retreat food now. But the morning breakfast, I always make myself. And what I used to make when I was in New Jersey, I would make these wonderful smoothies, just, piling it up with bananas and fruit. And then I'd put in a bunch of kale and a bunch of seeds. And I always had that. And for lunch, always a big salad. What's really fun about a salad is you could work together, husband and wife, or the kids, and you just add anything you want to the salad. And then I would make the greatest dressings. I mean, my dressings, I started to invent dressings. And one of the dressings I really invented was, if I really liked a soup, I would add some vinegar and I'd add some nuts to the soup, putting it in the Vitamix, of course, and maybe even some raisins. And I would get this new taste just by using the soup as the base. So that was kind of it.
That's a great idea. Somebody's commenting, Trisha, how pretty your daughters are, and they are very pretty and beautiful, in fact. But what's interesting is none of them look alike. All three of them look like they're not even related.
I know. It's a crazy thing. It's absolutely nuts. We go from Talia to Jenna to Kara to Sean. Sean and Jenna look the most alike. Kara looks like my side of the family. Talia more like Joel's side. Jen is a combo, and Sean's a combo.
Yeah, it's so interesting
Yeah.
about that. So yeah, and actually 2 of your daughters have been on the show, so we'll have to get the other 2 kids on sometime. Then
Oh,
we get the
wonderful.
whole family. There's a question from Sandy. Why did you guys move to California?
Very good question. Serendipitously, wasn't planning on doing a retreat, wasn't planning on anything until about a few years ago, maybe in 2018, we got an email from somebody bringing up the retreat again. We had thought about doing the retreat in Flemington, and it fell through. Our plans fell through. This was many years ago. And so as we were getting older, we thought we'd retire. My oldest daughter was in California, so we felt 6 months we'd be in California, 6 months in New Jersey. And my sister, Randy, who works in our success program, she's the director of our outreach program. She never goes into the MD office, or rarely does. And she picked up an email, and here was a guy who said, we found a house. We think it would be a great retreat for you guys. Come to San Juan Capistrano. And so we go to San Juan Capistrano and we see it. My 2 daughters didn't want to even come, but when we saw the whole thing, we were all blown away. So that brought us the idea of the retreat again. My one daughter was studying pre-med in Philadelphia. Her friend, who was in the same building with her, said, why don't you come with me to San Diego to study for the MCAT? And so my daughter says, Mom and Dad, I'm going to San Diego. So we, after seeing the house that was in San Juan Capistrano, it didn't work out. The house wasn't perfect. And my daughter coming to San Diego, we said, why don't you guys, when you go there, Jenna and Kara were going, look for a place for us. Maybe we can do a retreat in San Diego. And that's really how it came about.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that story. So let's see who asked. Denise says, does Dr. Fuhrman ever ice skate anymore? Does anybody in the family ice skate?
You know, he really rarely. He really has transformed that love of skating into skiing. Skiing is his passion.
Nice.
Real passion.
That's the one thing you won't get in San Diego, but you don't have to go too far to find it.
Well, that's another plus for Joel.
Yeah.
Stop skipping a jump.
So Stephanie says, mushrooms are part of the G-bombs. What is your favorite way to cook them?
You know, the main thing is that we water saute them. We use some balsamic vinegar that we can put in it, and I put it in my salads. That's pretty much what I do.
Yeah. And so they're saying, can you microwave them and keep the water for flavor, or do you need to discard it because of the toxic stuff in mushrooms?
No, I think that's fine. I think it's okay to microwave and keep the water. You can put it as far as with your vegetable stock.
Yeah, absolutely. Kathy says, do you guys do any retreats on the East Coast?
No, not anymore. We're West Coasters.
Once
it's only one flight over. She can come.
Yeah, no, it's I saw it. It's beautiful. I on the way to Mexico once. I didn't see any of you guys there, but I think.
Oh yes, you should definitely. Next time you're on the way, come over. We'd love to have you.
So beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, the house, just the view, man. I mean, what a great place to go to just.
Well, come by anytime.
Just to renew, you know. Well, gosh, this was so fun. You should do more. You're very good. You should do more. More.
Invite me, and I'll be happy to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so fun hearing about you and your story. You know what? Is Dr. Fuhrman is funny, like in person? Like, yes. I mean, with you,
yes.
He's very funny.
He doesn't always joke around, but when he does, it's very funny. Yes.
Because like when he gives lectures, and if people don't get his jokes, he'll go like, well, that was a joke, like, and so I like it. He kind of, it's goofy sometimes, but I really like his sense of humor. And I'm wondering if it's like that in person.
Yes, he's funny.
That's good. Well, I'm glad. Well, you guys are a great team, and thank you both so much for the work you do, and your kids too. I mean, almost all of them are doing something.
You too. Look what you do. How much you created, and it's. Do you not feel it's a gift?
It's so fun. It's really fun helping people. It really is. And so we've heard from everybody except for Sean and Jenna and your dad. So if they ever want to come on, let me know.
Sure, Jenna would love to. I know that much.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to have to wait a few years.
Yeah, her. I do have Jenna's email, so I can contact her. But I didn't know about your dad's story. Your dad's story is like, to me, that is the most hopeful of anything, because I live in a 55 and over community, and I just see people going like this with their health. The fact that somebody at 70 could not only improve it, but improve it to the degree that he did. I mean, the doctors must be astounded at his recovery.
Correct, absolutely. But I have to say this: my mother-in-law, Isabel, is going to be 94. And she is what we call the game coordinator on Eat to Live Retreat. She goes every night. She's here. She lives 2 miles away from us. She's completely independent. She drives her car. She comes to the retreat, and she plays games with the ladies at night. It's hysterical, but she is phenomenal. So she's another person who's just doing so well, knock on wood.
I would love to meet both of them. They sound amazing. And the story of healing, and, I forgot to ask you, but I will ask, because it's so interesting that you guys are so knowledgeable of food addiction, but really being overweight wasn't a thing in either of your families, was it?
No.
Yeah.
We were just brought up correctly. Considering the fact that my parents were conventional, my mom conventional, her mom conventional, we always knew enough about portion control. And we always knew that, my mother didn't let me have any more than 2 cookies a day. And I guess for myself, I'm just a different caliber, because food is not that important to me. Although the more I eat wholesome foods, the more I become a foodie. I have to say this, instead of, I love the food we eat. And when you know that it's healthy, man, you just want it. You want it. So I was never a foodie, ice cream. I loved ice cream. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't obsessed with it. Now I can see the beauty of the foods we eat and how delicious, and I love them. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think our food is delicious, and I feel bad for people that one thing I also love about Dr. Fuhrman, he always says, it's really hard to live in both worlds. When you have a foot in both worlds, it's really hard, because then you never really enjoy either.
Exactly. And not only that, but if you're not yourself, you have to be who you are. And somebody said to me, boy, Dr. Fuhrman doesn't care what other people think about him, does he? And I said, but why should he? He's proud of who he is. He's kind. He's transparent. He's passionate. Same with me. If you don't like how I eat, well, that's on you. I'm proud of myself. And look, lady, or look, friend, or look, this is if you really like me, you really care about me, you'll be happy for me. Yeah. You wouldn't be pushing your stuff onto me.
Yeah, that's good. You guys are great. Well, Kim says this, just like what we started. Thank you for encouraging Dr. Fuhrman to go to medical school. So we should all benefit from this information. My pleasure. And he says, Dr. Fuhrman's amazing. We really appreciate what he does. But now you know who we have to thank for it, because without Lisa, he might either be an Olympic skater or a shoe salesman.
He put in a lot of hard work to get where he is today.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, I can't wait. He'll be on in a few weeks, so we can't. I'm sure he'll hear how great this was. Well, thank you so much, Lisa.
My pleasure, Chef AJ. Really a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when we have another doctor's wife, because guess who's on is Mary McDougall. There's a bunch of you out there, apparently. Take care, Lisa.